Hey, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Fireside Chat. It is April 30th, 2021. How fast 2021 has been rolling by is just absolutely amazing. I've had so many fun interactions with hosts right here on these Fireside Chats as we launch these here in 2021. And guess what? Coming up for you guys soon, we're going to be rebranding this thing, and it's going to be Voice America Behind the Microphone. Because everybody we talk to, they're behind the microphone. As you see, I am, and Sarah and Amy and Brian and Sandra, who will be on today, are also behind the microphone all the time, doing their radio shows on Voice America. I want to bring in the co-host of the show, Miss Sandra Rogers. Hello, welcome.
Ooh, hey, Ryan.
Treasure,
how are you? I'm well. How are you? This Friday, April 30th, as you say. It is the end of the month.
Like my daughter said, Friday.
Good to see you. Good to be with you. I'm looking forward to the show today. We've got some excellent hosts that are going to be our guests. And I love the new name of the show, Behind the Microphone, because again, all of us are behind the microphone in some form or fashion, but getting more of an in-depth feel and knowledge about the host that host Voice America's programming is exciting.
Yeah, and I think you and I are just trying to be Oprah, so we're trying to get that branding right. You know, get these guests and really get the the skinny on all the different things that they do.
Mm-hmm.
It's definitely a great opportunity, and I absolutely enjoy bringing our hosts on to these chats, these discussions, round tables, or whatever you want to call them, and just allowing everybody to kind of connect, and allowing hosts to talk to other hosts, and find out about all their different shows and the programs that they're creating, and their why behind their radio show and their podcasts, and what message they're really trying to get out there. And coming from that space too, as the network, wanting to, provide as much value as we can to ourselves and all of the hosts on the network. And I see all this stuff and everybody in 2020 and they're Facebook living it up and they're doing everything. And so I was like, nah, all right, we're going to have to break that mold, and we have to do that too. But just because everybody else is doing it doesn't mean we're going to do it, but I think we can do it better. And we have, and these have been amazing. Some of the last pieces of content, guys, go check out some of the last 5 episodes. I mean, we've had some amazing human beings that have been on these Fireside Chats. Really, really groundbreaking work that people are trying to do and are doing. And so I implore you guys to go back on our YouTube channel, Facebook page, or Twitter account. Go check out the past episodes of these Fireside Chats that we've been doing. There's 5 episones for you guys to go listen to. So I implore you to do that.
Yeah, we have 5 branded channels over here at Voice America. I believe we've featured hosts from each one of those channels. It's refreshing to get a feel for who they are and that connectivity that they have together. As you will learn about the professionals that we have on this evening's program. But I've seen across the board, Brian, the synergy that happens between the professionals that host shows here. They come for a certain reason. They have, this experience and knowledge in this space, in this professional space. But as we will learn tonight, and as we've learned in the past programs, there is a commitment to humanity. There's a commitment to society that these professionals want to make an impact to. They have passion to make a difference, and how they are changing lives is encouraging. It's wonderful, and I just love it. No,
you're 100% correct, and that's one of the reasons why I've been at Voice America for 18 years. We've been here for 10, but I jumped out of traditional radio and that AM, FM, big kind of terrestrial space, because I hated the fact that the narrative was always driven by sponsors and advertisers, right? You know, we all want to get sponsors and advertisers to cover production costs and distribution costs and those types of things, which is all well and good. But, you know, I don't know if I ever told the story, but one of the reasons I got out of terrestrial radio was these guys were running a talk show. I was behind the board mixing as a board operator and producer at the time. And the guy was giving out some really good, it's kind of like Dr. Bob on our station, right? You know, he's like a holistic guy. And so, you know,
Bob
he's
Martin,
like, yeah, Dr. Bob Martin.
Yeah.
And the guy said something about depression, and we got done. And then I got pulled into the program director's office, like, you know, I don't know, the next day or something like that. And they play back the air tape, and they're like, you hear him saying this, this, and this. And, you know, the host is there with me as well. And they're like, well, you can't say stuff like that. And we're like, well, why? I mean, it's the truth, you know? And they're like, oh, well, you know, this large pharmaceutical company is one of our main sponsors, paying like all this money, you know, and we can't have you guys, you know, talking about natural remedies for depression when, you know, we're having commercials for, you know, I want to get sued.
Prescription.
So,
you want a prescription for your doctor. Yeah.
For anxiety and depression.
Yeah.
That's kind of what I was like. I don't know if I could be here anymore. It's kind of weird. And then I happened to get a phone call from Ruben, who was my buddy who worked at the same station. He's like, hey, man, I'm working at this new place called Voice America. You should come check it out. And that was in early 2003. And here we are.
That's fabulous. See
Crazy.
how things work? You know, total creative freedom is important. Yeah, exactly.
All right, well, let's stick to our schedule because I know usually we do about a little 5-minute introduction, and we want to just get right into the content because
let's meet our host.
Nobody wants to hear me jibber jabber. You can go listen to my radio show if you want to hear that. Our first guest on the show, our host and co-host of Making Action Happen, Sarah Blackhurst and Brian McCain. They've been on the network for just a short time, started back in September of 2020. And have a fantastic show on the Voice America Variety channel. And we want to bring them on because they're just awesome. You know, you can catch their shows Thursdays at 12 o'clock Pacific time on the Voice America Variety channel. But I want you to know, when I do Finding a Frequency and we talk about entrepreneurism and, you know, people building businesses and like doing all these different things, and we get to do those interviews, the number one thing that always comes up is, you can't do anything unless you get off of your keister, takes action. So we want to bring
call to action. Absolutely.
Welcome to Fireside Chat, you guys. We appreciate you spending your Friday afternoon with us.
Well, thanks, Ryan, so much. We appreciate it. I'll tell you that I actually started talking to Brian about coming on with Action 22 right after we started the show. And it's been a whole lot of fun, but I think that for our folks, it's been or for us as an organization, it's been a tremendous tool to fulfill our mission, which is to be a stronger voice for our members in Southern Colorado and for these rural communities in Colorado. So I'm just really appreciative of the network for giving us an opportunity to do this, for letting us say what we need to say, for letting us highlight who we need to highlight, and really talk about some of the bigger issues that we have happening in Colorado on the state and federal level. So there's a whole lot that goes on. And Colorado politics are fascinating and crazy and fun. And so Brian's been in it for a pretty long time. He's been in it for longer than I have. I come from a nonprofit administrative background, and Brian's definitely from that political background. So we've been able to cover a whole lot of bases, but this has been a wonderful avenue for us.
I remember when you guys first came on and you and I had these conversations. You're like, I have these events that we're doing and we're going to go here and we're going to go there. And, we tried to coordinate all of these things to be able to kind of broadcast and put those messages out via the radio show. And when, you and I did training, when we onboarded and we were doing those things, I thought to myself, I was like, man, this is awesome. When you get to work with people who are really passionate about what they do and where they want to go and they want to get their messaging out there, those are the things that Voice America lives for, because whatever you guys want to do, whatever you can think of creatively, or however you want to get your message out there, that's what we're here for. Being able to work with you guys has been fantastic. Sarah, I know you and I have been on several phone calls in the beginning of when you guys started, and Brian, the different political work that you've been doing, and your approach to politics as well is second to none. And that's the other thing that I really love about this Voice America world versus a traditional AM FM broadcast world is we get the opportunity to work with folks from so many diverse backgrounds and help them to kind of laser focus their message and give them a place to be able to do so, but also work with people of integrity and people that have values, right? And that's very, very important to Voice America and our brand, that we're not just, oh, hey, I have money, so I can do a radio show. That's right. That's not what it's about for us.
Right.
Which is why everybody goes through this process of vetting and making sure that everything jives between the network and the messaging and all that kind of stuff. And you guys are a perfect example of a show that's out there trying to do great things for your local community, get the words out, but at the same time doing it in a manner that is appropriate and professional. So kudos to you guys for what you're doing.
Yeah, no, thank you. And just to be fair, Sarah just asked me to come on and give my opinion on, I think, one episode. It was the first or second episode that she did. And then, a month later, she got me. So, I'm here.
You're stuck now. Your image is on the banner. So now you're stuck.
Yeah. So you both are co-hosting the program. And it seems to be community-oriented content that you're bringing. Sarah, I had read somewhere your philosophy centers around what matters most to those that you serve. So listening to the community there is important. And you can change communities because you are involved, right? I recently moved into a new neighborhood. I know my neighbors as well, but there's definitely some things that I would like to, see different, or become a part of that community to make a difference. And so, that's my goal for 2021, is to be more involved in my own community. But how is this working for you in terms of how did you see the needs that was in the communities that you're working with? And then, what gave you this this confidence really, and this desire to step into that space and to serve the community, to make a difference?
Oh, that's a great question, Sandra. Thank you so much. So, that philosophy is twofold. And it's something that I really drive home with my board. And it's two parts. One, what matters most to those we serve? And then the second part is what does our community need from us? And I think one of the things that happens is there's a lot of, this is what needs to happen. This is what needs to happen. This is what needs to happen.
Right.
And you never can change anybody's mind that way. And you can never win anybody over to your way of thinking. And I think for a lot of these marginalized communities, however that happens, whether it's a poverty or a geographic or a race issue or any of those things, you have people that come in and they go, here's what you need to do. This is what needs to happen. And so in order to be really effective, I think you have to come from the approaches, what matters most to you? Ask those questions and then turn that question, whatever that answer is, and say, what does our community need from us? And that should be the driving force for your objectives. So I take almost a military approach to our strategy, saying what needs to happen here. But I don't do that until I find out what matters most to our communities. And I think that it's just, that's been a philosophy that I've developed over our career. And it really serves as a sort of, it keeps us in the lane. It keeps us where we're supposed to be and keeps us focused on what our mission is. And I think that's kind of, I mean, Brian comes from a different background. I think that's how we do it.
And part of that too, one of the challenges in any community or any group of people is to figure out what does matter most to them, because a lot of times doing this work, you'll have multiple, I mean, it's the corporate setup, or you have multiple meetings to talk about something, but there's no goal set or there's no focus on it. And one thing that we really stress, it's action. It's like making action happen. And the challenge sometimes is what actually does matter most to you. You know, instead of talking about 12 things, what are 3 things that need to be done and need to be changed? And if you could get 2 out of those 3, then you can move on to 3 more.
Yeah, I think you see how communities are disconnected in some ways, but it does take action like you're taking to bring those communities together, because at the end of the day, we do want the same things. We maybe want them in a different way, or we don't know the way to get them in the right way or directly or whatever, but making those connections happen and everybody sort of getting together and throwing some stuff in that pot and coming up with a wonderful solution. There have been programs on Voice America that had, focused on just rebuilding communities. Communities disband and they break up for a number of reasons. Maybe there's one employer in that community that went out of business, and now the community had to go outside of that community for work and shopping and all of that stuff. So you don't bring the finances back into the community. And so that makes a difference in a lot of ways as well. Brian, you're in that political spectrum. So I like the connection that you both have there, because if you sit on committees and you sit on panels and you're in that seat where you can make laws, change laws and decisions like that, that is a definite way to serve the community.
It is. And I always remind people that, when I was working for Congress and the Senate, you lose that touch with reality, basically, because you're in Washington, D.C. making these laws. And part of my job that I did and was great at, and I thank my former boss for this, was he would check me. He would say, like, how is this going to hurt and affect your community or make it better? And every decision we made from a lawmaker perspective, we were really good. Like, we were on the ground, like, is this going to hurt or help you? And if it's going to hurt you, then this isn't good. And that really drove our office with my time the past 10 years.
Yeah. I totally agree. I feel like a lot of times with politics in general, when you take the correlation of politics and put that with community, it takes a special type of politician to actually take the time to take a step back and not worry about, how am I climbing the political ladder, or how am I getting to where I want to go politically, versus actually being a servant leader, right? And looking into the community and saying, hey, what do you people actually need? What is important to you? And then bringing that back in a political spectrum to then go fight for that, specifically for me, like right here in Phoenix, like I live in District 7 of Phoenix, right? And I don't feel like the representation and the connection between our district representative and the community are a one-to-one type of relationship. I feel like that, there's a disproportionate amount of human beings in our district that don't or that are thinking differently than how we're being represented in the city council and the types of things that we're able to get accomplished or want, right? And then, we just had our election cycle. And during that election cycle, what was crazy was there was actually a 2-way tie for this particular District 7. So they had a runoff, right? And what was really scary was the runoff didn't really determine anything other than who had a bigger wallet. right? And it wasn't necessarily representation. And we have an issue in our community in District Number 7 of getting people out to actually vote. Right. A lot of people are staying home and they're not, getting out there and voting, but they're complaining about things that they want done, but they're not getting out there and voting. Right. And that's where you end up with, somebody who has a larger wallet being able to win, that space because, they're able to kind of make influences and inferences on certain components on what they want to do versus the other person who actually lives in the community, who's actually in touch with the community. Right. But because the community is the way that it is, they're able to leverage their wallet to give them the lever to success. And like, that's just like what's so wrong with politics right now. And something I think just in general, like that connection between just as micro as I'm going right now with, a specific district and a person who represents that district in the city council, making the connection to the actual public is probably the hardest thing that there is to do. So how are you guys working in that space to make sure that, you're representing your, I hate the word constituents, right? But how are you representing the actual population of a given community to make sure that their voice is heard through who they've elected to do the right thing?
So Brian's going to have a slightly different opinion about this than I am. Which is perfect for what we're doing. But I'm going to say it in short that we know that our approach is successful and our approach is being passionately nonpartisan. And this is how we know that what we're doing is actually having an impact. When I first started with Action 22, and I'll have to go back that Brian and I have been friends for a long time, have been colleagues for a really long time. But in former lives, I mean, I've known him for a long, before I came here. But one of the things that was a sort of a goal of mine or an objective of mine was to say what success looked like. And I had determined that I knew that we were successful if decision makers, lawmakers, elected officials would put a part of their natural process that they would consider how what they did would affect us. I know that that's happening right now because we have really great relationships, regardless of what party they're with. We have really, really great relationships with our elected officials. We have several of them. Most of them are members of Action 22 as individuals, but they come to us. And I'll tell you that it's not just those elected officials, but probably twice a day or more, I'll get a phone call from, like earlier today, it was from the broadband office or the Department of Transportation or any of these offices asking where Action 22 is on this. What can they do to win us over? So they really, or what they need help connecting with people on that front line, and we're their resource for them. So I know it's working, but Brian probably has a slightly different view of that.
Yeah, I'll keep it short. I measure my success on how afraid they are by us, that if we're unhappy with something they do and they're nervous about it and they don't want to make us unhappy, that's how I measure success with the organization. Because we're just looking out for our people, our members, and we cover 22 counties and their interests are our interests.
And that is not in doubt. They know that is not in doubt. We will throw fists in a second to take care of our members.
Well, people need that advocacy. They need that, wall so that you're not feeling like you don't count or don't matter, and so many times that is the case. So if you both are there entrenched as representatives of the people, and
we're not running for office.
Yeah. And
so
see, that's even better,
right?
Yeah. But Sarah, looking at your credentials, your background and the history throughout your history, it seems that you have just been in a space where you want to matter. You want your work and your efforts to matter and to make a difference. So when you talk about the work that you do with hospice, with children and sex trafficking and all of those things, that is a voice for individuals and in those moments of need. And you're speaking up and taking action on behalf of those individuals and in those situations. So I do come back, Ryan, to the synergy that we have with the host that hosts programs here on Voice America. It's like and before we do, bring Amy on, just can you give me your why for doing the show? I think you've been. I know you've been with this network for beyond 13 shows, right? And so, what is your why for continuing with us? And what has your experience been like hosting your radio show with Voice America?
Brian, you go first.
I enjoy it. It's something that working in my previous job I could not do. I was not allowed to talk to the press or have my own opinion because that would reflect the office. And this gives me a chance to actually chime in on these issues and say what's important and what matters to me and what I think. And I think that's really important. And I haven't had the opportunity to do that for 10 plus years. And it's very cathartic. And I'm not complaining about what I did. I was very happy with where I was at. And my job was helping people, working for a representative or a senator. But this is my chance to say how I really feel about things and what I think can make a difference.
So I used to coach nonprofit EDs, especially if they were new to that arena. And the thing that I always said was be mission focused, mission focused, mission focused. And so for Action 22, it's be that strong voice. And I can't think of a better way to really do that than this. So that's the primary reason that we do the show. And it's just a lot of fun. We enjoy it. Our show last week, I need a break every once in a while, and I like good stories. So we did. We talked about UFOs, and we talked about there's a national park that they're trying to get done. So we did that. So it's a lot of fun, but also it's actually literally fulfilling the mission of Action 22.
Yeah. Right on. I want to say this to both of you. Yeah, that's all I want to say too. Thank you. Thank you for what you do.
Don't give me any buttons.
Yeah.
Thanks so much, you guys. We really appreciate the visit.
Oh, we appreciate you guys being on, and some of the things that you guys talk about and your passion, it really shines with what you're trying to accomplish. And I think it's absolutely amazing. Brian, I also want to give you a shout out too, just from one veteran to another. Thank you for your service. Those are things that are intangible assets of human beings that people just don't kind of quite understand. And to come home and then get into politics and do all those things and go from service to service is coming, and I appreciate that very much. Yeah,
thank you, and thank you for your service as well.
Wonderful. So we had this great comment that came through just a couple of moments ago. I'm going to show it again for this is our resident Bill Biss, who always does he's always listening to the program. Here, this is the one I wanted to bring up. The driving forces with the younger people. And I feel glad that younger people are making things better. I think I was looking at some demographical statistical data, as I do quite often here at Voice America. And our country is very young. It's very young. You have, the boomer generation, which was that huge generation of individuals that are slowly but surely, retiring and kind of getting out of the workforce and, migrating out. And then you have the second largest demographic of individuals, which are the millennials, right? Which I personally do not self-identify as a millennial, but I was born in 1980. So some people would say I am a millennial, but I don't want to feel like Gen X. Just saying. But I think that it's important what Bill said is the driving force is with younger people. We have a young country. We have a young, a lot of free thinking human beings in the United States right now. And that kind of gives us a nice bridge into our next guest of the radio show, who is just amazing. Amy hosts the show, The Power of Young People to Change the World. And I'm telling you, that strikes a chord with me so much just because I'm a dad. I got a 7-year-old daughter, and I'm telling her all the time, like, hey, girl, you put in the work. You can do whatever you want. You can change the world. And, so that really strikes a chord with me specifically as a dad. Sandra, I know that, you guys got a whole family full of little guys and gals and, making sure that we have a young generation of fiscally responsible human beings who understand like what's going on in society, what's going on in the world, how they can help, all those things is very important. Because at the end of the day, when all 4 of us are like 90 years old, we better make sure that younger generation knows what's going on, because they're going to be making all the decisions for
their leaders, our next leaders. Yes.
So with that being said, I want to bring on Amy to the show. Amy Muirs, thank you so much for joining the program. And Brian and Sarah, I'm going to drop you guys out for just a second as we highlight Amy, and then we're going to bring everybody back at the end, and then we'll wrap it up. But thank you so much for you guys joining, and I appreciate you, Amy, for being on the show today.
Absolutely.
Your program is fantastic. You've been, really getting into the trenches of some fantastic information. I actually listen to your show. Sandra knows this. I'm a technology junkie, right? So, you would think that like a car mechanic, right, who works at the mechanic shop, like they don't want to go home and like work on their own car because they've already been working on cars all day. I literally get in the car and listen to more podcasts and more talk radio content. And then I do that on the way home and on the way to the studio, and I do it all day long. And, but things about young kids and how they're able to change the world and motivating them and getting them into certain, headspaces, incorporating learning into classrooms and having after school programs. And, all of those things are very important to me as a dad, and especially for our community, as I was talking earlier about living in District Number 7, like District 7 is like, part of downtown Phoenix. It's the south side of the town. It's, not, it's not Scottsdale. I can tell you that right now. So like our community, needs people like Amy to come in and make sure that people understand that, these young folks that we're raising, that we're bringing into existence, we've got to be ready to prepare them for the world that they're going to be living in, and not the world that we all live in now.
Correct.
And I think that's one of the great things that you address on your program. And so, Amy, thank you for joining us, and just tell us a little bit about yourself, who you are, and why you do what you do.
Okay.
Great. Well, thanks for inviting me to be on the show.
The audience.
I love the sound effects. Yes. Yeah. Never in a million years would I've actually have thought that I would be hosting a radio show. I have to tell you that. So I've been with the National Youth Leadership Council for 18 years, working in a variety of positions, but now I'm the CEO. And really our focus is about bringing young people together and empowering them and lifting up their voices, so that they understand the responsibility they have to make the world a better place, and helping them find that passion, that connection to community, and that commitment to lifelong service. So I feel like I'm among peers here when listening to Brian and Sarah talk about the work that they're doing, and that and I heard servant leadership, which is what we're all about. So it's really, at the end of the day, for me, it's that commitment to young people and helping them turn into to really engaged and informed global citizens who are passionate about making the world a better place for everyone. So that's why I do the work that I do, and I love it so much. And obviously 18 years later, and I'm still doing this work, but really, it's been such an amazing experience to be able to bring young people's voices to the Voice America community, and using that as an amplifier. So I'm just grateful for the platform and for the network for providing that platform for us, because I mean, from, a fourth grader from DC to, my high schoolers that were on just last week, hearing them and their excitement, and then off the air, hearing how empowered they felt for being able to share their stories, and the work that they're doing in their communities, and how that makes them feel, and also the impacts they've made. It's just the best.
Yeah. Hey, Amy, thank you so much, and welcome to the program as
Thanks,
well.
Sandra.
You've been doing this for 18 years, and I would have to say, in 18 years, that means that there's some commitment there on your part, and there's a reason why you're staying in this space for as long as you are. I would imagine that, though, in this space, there's been many opportunities for you to grow and know more, so that you can share that with others. But how do you sit on, I mean, tell me something about you personally that gave you the desire to be on a council like this. What did you see?
Yeah.
Was there something missing in some place, or how did you say, this is what I'm going to do? Because the council is there to make a difference, or to change some things. So what motivated you to do that?
That's exactly my question too, Sandra.
Yeah.
Where
Where does it come from?
18 years is a long time, Ryan, for this.
I know, you can read between the lines, right?
No.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a great question. It really is, because nobody stays anywhere for 18 years, right?
Time. Absolutely.
Time out. I've been at Voice America 18 years.
Okay, you and I, Ryan.
Okay.
So 18 years, we're good. So at NYLC, we get to work with young people.
Yeah.
And it's so how many like the young people that I started working with 18 years ago are now mothers, they're fathers, they're having children. But I see it was that connection to those young people, and the experiences that we shared together, they impact me more than I think I impact them. I mean, what I gain from working with these young people is so fulfilling. It's hard to even imagine doing anything else. I'm just grateful every day for the work that I get to do. And honestly, it's that connection to the young people that keeps me here and drives me. I mean, I don't have anything more eloquent or more to say other than it's the youth. It's really them.
There is an emotional connection that happens. And like you say, if you've seen these adults, now they're adults, but they're children when you first met them, and the journeys that they went through and who they became as adults, and how that you influenced that, right? And so it becomes one of those things where thank God I met this person, and now look at their lives, and you were a game changer. You were that connector and that connection. So I'm sure that there are many people whose life you've changed and you've made a difference and you've impacted them. And you're right, the children are our future, and they need to have some sort of examples on how to go out there and be contributors to our society. And in what way are they contributing to this society? And how are they impacting? And who are the examples for them to follow, right? And so the work that you do, it sounds tremendous. You're on our platform. What are you thinking? How do you feel about the platform here and the level of support that you're getting from the team here at Voice America?
Oh, Voice America has been phenomenal. I've had a wonderful team, from our show producer, Steve, to Andrew, who's, on every week supporting. So it's been amazing. And just everyone's been so welcoming, and helpful. Especially, like I say, never in a million years would I have ever thought that I would be on the radio. I just no,
really, because you write, you submit articles, you also travel, you speak, and you speak with audiences throughout the United States. What are people asking you to come and talk about when you're invited?
So the work that we do at NYLC, well, we are working with young people, bringing those leadership skills. We work through through a pedagogy called service learning. Okay. So we work and train educators, whether they're in school or out of school, educators on how to use service learning as a way to connect students to community while still meeting those academic, civic, social, emotional learning outcomes. Wow. And so I speak at and train with different organizations, been to many conferences, both near and far. It's provided an amazing opportunity. But it's really, like I say, it's about bringing young people to the community and having them engage, but still connecting it to their learning, which is so powerful. It's mind-based learning. It empowers them. One of the schools that we work with in Chicago, one of my favorite quotes from one of the teachers, they said, when you're in our schools and we're doing service learning with our students, they show up and you get their butts in the seat. And once you get their butt in the seat, I can teach them. And so, these are kids that were on the verge of dropping out or had been kicked out of traditional schools. Sure. They were lucky if they would show up in a day. And so, what we do is help get kids engaged and excited and passionate. And then to feed into what Brian and Sarah were talking about, we connect them to their community so that they're taking action, so that they want to engage in advocacy around the issues that they care about, but they know how to do it, right? So if we want young people to be active, to care about politics, to care about what's happening in our world, to affect laws, to engage in democracy, we have to teach them that. So we're talking about civic engagement. We're talking about civic. So Ryan's on my side.
No, we're saying amen. I mean, that you are right on with that. You have to reach one and teach them, and then they move forward from there. But having, we make connections in different ways. And I know when I was learning and young in school, there were certain teachers I never related to. They just weren't me. They weren't teaching me. They were just telling me what to do, and I better get this done. And, I don't have that mindset to do that. So I was a little rebellious with that. But there were teachers that really you saw, Amy, you knew they cared, and they would take the time, and they would spend more time, and they would speak with you in a way that you knew that they wanted you to be successful. And so if you're saying that kids are showing up when you show up, that is saying that to me. That's saying that they value what you do, and they trust what you're doing. And that's key. That's a key right there. Yeah.
Well, it's hard to gain a kid's trust too. Yeah. They're very, meticulous in how they connect, especially the younger they are. Like, I like what you just said, Sandra and Amy. I'd love to hear your comment as soon as, and I'm sorry to jump in, but when you have a militant approach to like education, and that's been something that's been hard for me as a dad, right? Is making sure that I don't carry on my father, who was 101st Green Beret Airborne Ranger guy, who was my father. And I grew up in that way of like, got to get it done, got to get it done, got to get it done. But like, that doesn't work for all kids. It didn't work for me. I can tell you that. Even though I went into the Navy, I knew how it worked after I went into the Navy because I was prepared because of my dad. But as a youngster, right, like it didn't jive that way. And I'm learning that also as a father of a 7-year-old girl, who's about to complete 7th grade. And I'm so proud of my wife for helping her out with this, with 4 quarters on principal's list with straight A's in the middle of a COVID pandemic.
That's awesome.
That's amazing.
I'm going to throw a little kudos out there for my wife on that one. But it was because of, parents and people and myself, and for me being able to go, wait a minute, this isn't working. This doesn't vibe. This isn't, and my daughter is 7 years old and she's like, Dad, I'm not vibing with that.
Yeah.
I'm like,
yeah.
Like, how do I honestly, Amy, I think that's the hardest thing, is for an adult to connect with a child, especially if you're not their parents, right? And be able to guide them in a direction and provide them with learning opportunities and knowledge in a space where they can understand, their civic duties as human beings, as Americans. I remember when I was young, they used to have this program that was called Kids Can Vote, right? So like my mom, when I was a kid back in the 80s and 90s, would take me to the voting booth, and they would give you like a ballot, and the kid could fill out the ballot. And, I felt included in the votes that were happening. And I don't see those types of community-based programs anymore, where, it's like, hey, the kids can vote. Like, let's get everybody involved in understanding the democracy and how things work. And this has nothing to do with party at all. Just simple facts, especially with like community-based government. And how are we helping out the children to learn how those things work when the federal government, and in some places state government, has failed all of us in providing a tool or a mechanism to give education to the children so they know how they can contribute to society? Because everything that you do is amazing, and you could do like a bazillion radio shows, and you could be on Oprah, and you could be on USA Today, and have this huge audience, but it still will not reach the number of people that it needs to reach for people to have the education and that proprietary knowledge on what they can do to learn how all of those components work and be part of the decision-making process moving forward as we, progress as a very young nation.
Yeah. Well, and I appreciate that you talked about that, because actually right now there's a huge push for federal funding for both civic education and service learning. And so we've ignored it. We've ignored it for well over a decade. We haven't had any investment in our young people when it comes to civic education. And so we have to change it. If we don't, we're going to suffer for not just one generation, but multiple generations. We need to ensure that not only do our young people know how to vote, but they want to contribute. They want to volunteer in their communities. They want to go into national service or military service. We need our AmeriCorps members, our NCCCs. And it doesn't start when you go to college or you graduate college. Volunteerism doesn't start at some arbitrary adult age. It has to start when our students enter kindergarten. Kindergartners are amazing when they contribute, and classroom is your community, and they learn to care about one another.
Amy, that's why I was like, why? I'm like, oh, you're going to teach kids how to speak another language, like in high school? No, let's start teaching children how to speak another language, like while they're learning how to speak their native language.
So, exactly.
A one-to-one correlation,
Yep.
I absolutely, I listen to all of your shows. I love everything that you guys are doing. Like, it is so awesome, and just coming as a father, right. And coming from that mindset myself, I love how your approach is and what you're doing. I've learned so much personally I have to just thank you for that very much.
Oh,
But
I appreciate that.
I also want to bring Sarah and Brian back in because, as we talk about, civic responsibilities and duties as human beings and, being part of our communities and members of society, Sarah and Brian with, Action 22 and the things that they're trying to do in Colorado and integrate different things. I think that they could give also a little bit of a spin on, how maybe they're helping out their young community base in Colorado, and maybe there's something that you guys can all work on together, right, with the political side and the advocacy of education as it comes to young folks, and how do we meld those two worlds together and really come up with something that is impactful to the point. I'm like, did she just take a drink out of a wine bottle?
Pellegrino. I know it's happy hour, but this is Pellegrino. But that would be pretty hardcore to just chug the bottle up. Like, although I can say that's there's been times that's a bit of fact.
Welcome back into the feed. As you know, Amy is just really doing some amazing things. Helping the youth to change the world and helping adults to foster youth innovation and imagination through their education. And it's just an amazing thing because I think that there's so many communities that are across the country that they don't get it. Right.
Unfortunately.
Inclusion is very important. And so is diversity. I did a show on this the other day for Finding Your Frequency, where we were talking about inclusion and diversity in the workforce, right? And also servant leadership. And, I was like, well, if you own a company, why would you not want an old man and an old woman, a young man and a young woman, people of color, people of different backgrounds, races, religions, right? That work at your company. So that way the workforce that you have at your company represents the diverse components of the population. So as you're solving product problems and solving issues for your customers
or community,
community,
yep.
Right? How are you doing that in a manner where you're absolutely garnering the demographic of the proper community base to make action on all fronts based upon all of the information that you have from the populace and not from the person who has the big wallet?
We're laughing because we have this conversation probably twice a day. Brian and I have this conversation. So to go speak first to how we engage young people, I think it has to do two things. And I think like most parents, I cringe when I think about what is being taught in civics class these days. They don't even know what civics is. So I think that's part of it. But I think it becomes making it relevant for them. Number one, how that's going to impact. And then I think the second thing is really recognizing when you see something outstanding and that youth are doing. And and Brian saw this, it's somebody he knows. And we had a great show with Nicholas DeSalvo a few weeks ago. He was incredible. Brian, tell him a little bit about him. He was awesome. I met with him through the congressman's office, but he was a 16-year-old that decided to run for a Metro District Board, which is similar to a city council or county commissioner. And what we found was we did everything we could to get into schools. And I think that's where it starts, is you have to be involved with your school, especially if you have children. You need to be involved. And how our tactic was, we would go to the school and speak to the kids. And then as a result of that,
this kid who was 14 years old at the time, freshman in high school, when he turned 16, he found out that he could run for office, public office. And he did. And, you know, it was a huge election. There was like 12 people running for this one spot, but he came in like third. And he was 17 when the election happened. And that just goes to show how important it is to get into the school.
He's going to win next time.
So this kid was so incredible. I want to brag a little bit. This kid was so incredible that he did not fundraise for his campaign. He works at like Albertsons or something. And so he did his entire campaign online. I think he spent $300 of his own dollars to run this campaign. Wow. He came in third against a lot of adults who had gone out and fundraised. Simultaneously, and he lost, but simultaneously, he also was running for student body president of, I think, the largest high school in the area. And he won student body president. And then when he was on the show, we were asking him how he's engaging. Do what? Yeah. There was, so we asked him how he was engaging and what he was doing, like what he wanted to accomplish. And one of the things and he was sort of speaking it as and thinking about it as he was on the show. And he said that he really felt like there was a need to do a kind of a peer mentorship program. So we encouraged him to do that. He went back to his school. He got it all set up. And we said, as soon as you have this set up, let us know and we'll help you. We'll give you some money for it to do it. Yeah. So this kid comes back and says, we just really need snacks and stuff. And hey, would you mind giving us like $100? We're like, I was like, well, let's send him two. And he was, nope, I don't want anybody to do more than 100. We'll ask several people. I mean, this kid was phenomenal. Wow. But when we just gave him that voice and then we encouraged him in his efforts and let him do it and then followed up with that, it was just amazing. He's done amazing things. I think that's how we have to do it. And it goes back to that whole servant leadership that you're talking about, Ryan. It was his servant leadership, but then we were serving him, and look, exponentially it grew.
Yeah. We've had too much time in corporate life where it's this whole, angry man at the top down kind of philosophy with business rather than like a bottom up approach, and looking at, the CEO, CFO, those senior executive leaders, they're not dealing with the people that are like every day. Right. And I think that's what's interesting about children as it relates to kind of politics and in what you're talking about, right, is the kids have a really good understanding of like how their peers feel and what's going on. And like the child mind is so expansive and so free and so creative. These kids come up with solutions that, adults and economists and people who have multiple degrees are going, huh? I never even thought about that.
Yeah, how do you work the cell phone? No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah. But anyway. I think, Amy, that's one of the things that you're doing, right? Yeah. Is you're kind of you're shifting that mentality.
Shifting that. Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about how you guys are shifting that mentality and leveraging the creativeness of the child mind and putting it into the perspective of being able to leverage that for, the creative process as it relates to legislations or different other civic components. Because I'm telling you, I give my kid like these little projects to do. Like we got to the point now she's putting together 3-dimensional origami puzzles, right? So instead of a puzzle piece that's 7,000 pieces, it's flat. It's 5,000 pieces that have to go together like this and like this and like this, and then to make like a 3-dimensional object. I'm 40 years old. I've never been able to do that, and she's just like, bloop, here you go. Right? And the mind of those children is so expansive and creative, right? Like I think as we get older, we lose that, right? And so how are we leveraging that portion in civics to create laws and different things in those scenarios and pointing those kiddos in the right direction. Like Sarah said, like it was like, hey, we support you. We're going to help you out in A, B, and C. And then I think the most important part of what Sarah said was we followed up, right? Yep. So that's probably the most key. But what are you doing, Amy, in your sphere to make sure that is, moving its way through properly?
Well, and I think Sarah articulated it really well, right? So what we do is we talk about youth adult partnerships, and we're flipping classrooms. So teachers are more coaches. They're those guides on the side. Mm-hmm. They're not standing at the front dictating in mm-hmm. traditional leadership role, but really again, coaching from behind, like you do in servant leadership, right? Like you lift people up and you support them and you help them discover their own learning. And so when we're connecting with community, we're talking about investigating what's happening in our community, right? So they're going in and not just saying, I want to address hunger. Well, what does that look like in your community? Why are people hungry? Like what's happening? So they're digging into an issue area, and then they're really planning and preparing for how they're going to take action. So they're working together in teams. They're connecting with community partners, because we don't want our students thinking that they have to tackle this issue alone. They should know who in their community is addressing the issue that they're passionate about and what's already been done, and why do certain things work and some things haven't in this community. So really working together as a team to tackle something, and then deciding how they want to take action. Mm-hmm. And throughout the entire process, we're reflecting on it. That's where a lot of the really deep learning comes in. But it's always in partnership with adults, and it's giving those young people the space to share their voice, right? So we're creating that safe space that we talked about earlier, right? Like we're turning the classroom into the student space, not my space, not the adult space, but it's the student space to learn.
Don't worry, Amy, nobody goes to MySpace anymore.
I know, that's done, right? It'll come back someday.
No, I think that what you're doing is tremendous, and I have to give a shout out to the educators as well who are in those spaces, that they know that child, that young person is there to learn. But look at who they are when they show up to learn. What did they go through to get into that building that day? What is that home environment like? I think all of that matters when you're talking about moving people forward. And so you everybody sitting here have been in positions to educate, to influence the youth. And we know that there's a lot of conflict that's happening in society these days. And, where do you go? And COVID slapped everybody in the face. And so they're distancing and all of that stuff happened. So there's a recovery period that we're in. But you never stop doing the work. Even you were doing it before, and you're in that space now, and you come through this COVID thing and still in that space, but realizing that you have tremendous value in the work that you're doing.
And
I think we're working harder now. It's harder, right? It is like, as society starts to get back on pace with economics, whatever area that you live in, right? We've had 12 months, I'm going to say, of like inactivity basically. And so,
or limited one.
But limited. Yeah. But I'm saying, I'm talking about community wise. I'm talking about, from that space, I watched a documentary the other day, right? And the guy's walking through San Francisco, and people are like dodging each other to go around because they're, like all, afraid of the COVID. And it's like, well, that loss of connection of humanity has to stop at some point, right? And at some point, all of us are going to have to start to come together to make some change, because we've had this disparate 12 months of weirdness. But that's all I can call it, is a 12 months of weirdness, from elections and COVID and just weirdness.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so how do we bounce back as a people to try to make sure that, we take those kids that have been stuck at home doing online learning, and the ones who have been doing hybrid learning, and they're like, we're going to go to school for 3 hours a day. And then we're going to pick up the kid and take them home. And then, all of that puts strains on families and jobs and all those different things as it relates to the status quo. Right. And I think what's most important and what I love about Sarah and Brian, what you guys are doing, and Amy with what you're doing with young people is just, despite all of the challenges that everyone has had over the course of the last pandemic, right? You guys are still continuing to do the work and put in the effort to make sure that you bind the community. You put some, you don't put Gorilla Glue on your hair. You put it into the community to bind it together, right? That was a joke.
We need the laugh track on that one.
No, you just know why I said that. Somebody really did put Gorilla Glue.
Yeah,
piled it over. Yeah, silly people.
No,
don't do that. But, thank you so much for being on the program today. I want to urge everybody to go listen to Sarah and Brian on the Voice America Variety Channel Thursdays at 12 o'clock Pacific time, 3 p.m. Eastern on the Variety Channel, where you guys can tune in and to listen to this fantastic radio program. And then, Amy, the title of your program speaks volumes for who you are and what you do. The power of young people to change the world.
Yep.
Boom.
Hey, Amy, who's going to be on your show next?
3 o'clock Pacific time, 6 p.m. Eastern, Thursdays. And yes, well, who's going to be on next? Sorry, Sandra.
Next week we have Caleb Smith. He's 16. I think I met Caleb. I think he was like 14. It was 13 or 14 when I first met Caleb. And he has created a bunny sanctuary here in Minnesota. So the bunnies are therapy animals. And so this was his passion when he was just a very young man. And so we're going to have him on the show to talk about the work that he's doing and why he's doing it. So I'm really excited. He's an amazing young man. He was just at our conference, and so it'll be a good one.
That's fabulous. I love bunnies.
They're pretty adorable.
I love bunnies. I never thought them as therapy,
therapy rabbits.
Of therapy. But taking different strokes for different folks, though. But I'm glad to see that they're used for more than just, petting.
Sandra, have you ever held a bunny, Sandra? Have you ever held one? They're like they're like little fluff balls.
They are. Yes, I have. Yeah.
No,
I think rabbits are terrifying.
the rabbits, Caleb's rabbits are adorable. They're adorable.
But they kick, so they're like little.
These are therapy rabbits. They're trained as therapy
they lay
rabbits.
Down.
They're trained as therapy rabbits.
Like That's nice.
It's more about. I think it's less. Well, there's a lot to do with the rabbits, but it's also about bringing. Caleb says bringing happiness. To the world.
Together.
Happiness to the world.
Like a therapy emu. Terrifying.
You had some
Tucson, Sarah. We got those therapy emus. We got those in Tucson.
Yeah. Sarah, you've had some dynamic guests on your program.
We've had some incredible guests.
Yes, you've had some incredible guests. I've looked at the lineup there. I've not listened to many of your shows, but who do you have coming up?
Oh, this is going to be cool. So there's 3 organizations, my sister organizations here in Colorado that do advocacy for rural communities. And the big discussion this whole week, well, one of them has been redistricting. Congressional redistricting is happening across the country with the census coming out. So I'm going to have them on to talk about that. What we're proposing is exactly in line with amendments Y and Z that were passed in 2018. But we're stirring the pot. We're picking some fights about this because I'm adamant that those rural districts or those rural communities get the representation that they deserve. So we've picked a few fights. We're going to pick a few more. It's going to be interesting to watch. And these two incredible ladies are going to be on with us next week.
All right, that's kicking some action there.
Kicking some action,
Yeah.
you know. So, like, if I disappear or something, it wasn't Brian. It was somebody that I tipped off. What we're doing. It's a fight I'm looking forward to. Let's just say it that way.
Brian's an airman. He will find a helicopter and he will come get you.
Yes, I will do that.
Yeah.
Okay.
I will scramble some FA-18 Hornets. Okay.
Oh,
Brian will
I'll take it.
We got you. We got you, Sarah.
Thank you.
Wow.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you guys so much for tuning in to this latest episode of Fireside Chat on Voice America, soon to be Behind the Mic.
Yes.
You know what? I keep throwing my hand up here, and I notice that, like, you guys can see, like, my hand. I do karate, and I punched some stuff, and I messed up my hand a little bit.
I can see a bruise there.
It's not a bruise. It's actually skin missing, but that's okay. Listen, you get out. Hey, just like life, you get out of it what you put into it, okay? If you're going to learn how to swim, do you swim in the shallow end or do you swim in the deep end, right? And I always say you swim in the deep end because if you really want to know how to swim, and I'm not saying that just because I'm a Navy guy, it's just a life reference, right? If you want to learn how to swim, you swim the deep end, not in the shallow end, because you want to be prepared for everything, ready for all of those actions. My sensei says gas station ready and prison strong, right? And so I think as you guys, we all think about like what we're doing in the future, how Amy is helping young people, how Brian and Sarah are helping the communities in Colorado to band together to get things accomplished in a manner where, everybody can be cohesively heard and represented properly. And, with Amy allowing the kids to kind of get involved in that space where they can, see how the processes work, see how all of those things. That's swimming in the deep end, right? So Sandra, I want to leave it with you here. Take us out of this broadcast. Thank you guys all so much for joining us right here on the program. Sandra Rogers, Network Director, Voice America, take it away.
Hey, I just want to say thank you so much for joining us today. The purpose of the show is to really showcase and highlight our professional hosts that have taken time out of their schedule and their lives to host radio shows and bring information forward that is for the benefit of society and mankind. So I want to give a big shout out to Sarah Blackhurst and Brian and Amy for being a guest on today's show. And thank you for joining us. Join us next week. We'll have another roundtable of professionals that will talk about who they are, what they do, why they do it, and enlighten all of us. So thank you for joining us in this episode of Fireside Chat.
Bye, everybody. Have a fantastic weekend. Thank you guys for being on.
Have a good evening.